So I started things out very well. I had wonderful successes in my career. I got a record label right away. Wasn't looking for it. Didn't go looking, knocking on the doors. It just came to me. A lot of things kind of came naturally. But I want to tell you that from the beginning of all of that success, I see kids now, 20, 25, they have master plans. They have a 1-year plan, they have a 5-year plan, they have a 10-year plan. I had one plan, and that was to get drunk that day. That was my idea of how to plan your progress. But things kept happening. Just tell them I'll call them back, it's okay. Things kept sort of happening to me and unfolding, and I had a wonderful contract with Elektra Records in New York. I was already married and pregnant, not in that order. And my son was born in 1959. My son Clark, we'll talk about him a little bit later, a little bit more. My husband is a wonderful man, very handsome, extremely bright, loved to drink, like I do. But we drank pretty good. We had time, we had no money, so, we figured out, I made home brew and bottled it, and sometimes a bottle would blow up in the cabinet, but that was the price of having the booze. And wherever I could, I made homemade this or that. We always talk about the organic life and how to do things, renewable food sources, and that was where I started learning to make my own booze wherever I could. Quickly, as I began to be able to do so, began to buy the best booze there was. And I can remember everything that I did by what I was drinking. I know what I was drinking when I was married. I know what I was drinking when I was divorced. And all those things were important to me. I know now that I was medicating myself in order to stay on the planet. That's really the only thing I can say, is that I was medicating to stay here. To get myself in some place that was tolerable. You see, any mood that I had was intolerable, whether it was pleasant or not. It was intolerable for me to stay where I was. I now know that that's what addiction does to you. I know that that's what alcoholism does to you. It moves you quickly from here I am and I like it to anywhere I am I hate it, and I have to change that. I had started to, I knew that first of all I had this quite serious suicide attempt at 14. So, and I was always a depressive, in and out of it. I was also very positive and very optimistic. Did a lot of things that were natural to me. They came with the package, I guess, with the genetic package. So I was very determined. I was very ambitious. I was a workaholic. I was willing to go to any lengths to do anything professionally that I had to do. So I didn't slack. I was never late for things. I was never not there. I kind of showed up. In part, I think all of that early success is frankly because I knew how to get there. I knew how to get there no matter where I was, to show up sober, even though I drank every day to keep myself going. By the time I was 29, I had, first of all, I found therapy in New York. I went to a therapist immediately. I got an apartment on West 10th and Hudson in New York City, and I got into therapy because therapy was in the lease. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't in the lease. It wasn't in the lease, but I knew that I had to find somebody to deal with my depression. That was critical, that I find somebody to talk about this. And also I was already, of course, having trouble in my marriage. Why wouldn't I? I was drinking like this and traveling all the time, and my husband was a saint, of course, but his whole attitude was being stressed by my behavior. And I was a real down and dirty drunk. I mean, I would do anything when I was drunk, and I was drunk pretty much every day. Didn't take so much at the beginning. I could start out with a small bottle of this, and then pretty soon I had no idea how to get there and sort of have to take everything that was in sight. I got involved with these people in New York called the Sullivanians. Tell me if I'm telling you things you don't want to know, but I have to say them, however. So if you're sick of it, then we'll excuse you. I got involved with these therapists called the Sullivanians. I talk about them because they were serious, wonderful people. And they really believed in the creative process. They were very into Harry Stack Sullivan's approach to breaking the family boundaries and getting out there and being a creative person. They were very into journal keeping. I wrote down my dreams from that beginning. I had kept journals. I was always talking about my fears and my... However, you know, the thing that I particularly liked about them was that they felt that if you had anxiety, if you were depressed, if you were nervous, you should drink. They didn't really like pills very much, and they weren't psychiatrists, so they couldn't really prescribe them, but they really felt, and of course I stayed there, they said that to me. They said, you know, if we find out what's wrong with you, then you won't drink anymore. So I stayed there 15 years. Hoping never to find out what was really wrong with me, because who wanted that to happen? I know for a fact that many of them were alcoholics, and in one case, I think one of them died of alcoholism. And in that late 15 years, I had changed from one to another. They were all sort of the same temperament and the same opinion. They didn't really like families. They didn't like monogamy. They weren't interested in anything that had to do with the standard, you know, operating procedure for most of us. However, you know, I was crazy about them. Crazy, I guess, would be the operative thing. So here came this great career, you know, coming down the tracks at me. You know, there was Both Sides Now, there was Sending the Clowns. Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? We're at last on the ground. You where are the clouds? Now I will tell you that at the point I recorded that, I had had a lot of hits and a lot of success, and I had done a lot of things in my career. At that time, when I had that hit, I was barely able to get up in the morning. I could not spend a day without drinking. It was the beginning of the last 4 years of my drinking. The most successful, you know, the time when I had charting albums and charting singles, and everybody couldn't wait to get their hands on Judy Collins. So, and there I was, drinking myself to death. But it takes so long to do that. You know, I mean, this lady objects. I mean, it takes a long time, and it's that slow garden variety drunk story, which was like everybody else mine. Now, by this time, I had, in New York, my son had come back to live with me. I had lost custody of him for 3 years, and that was brutal and bitter. Actually, people think that the 60s were very romantic and very exciting, and they were really a drag for me, a lot of them. Very exciting to be doing what I was doing. I loved it. I knew everybody who was anybody. But I had this, both the alcoholism and also this struggle with my son, who was hyperactive, terribly bright, wonderful, interesting, handsome, good-looking, and by the time he was 9 or 10, was a full-blown addict. Full-blown. Nobody knew it then. How would you know that? You would have no way to know that. That wasn't standard in those days. Today I hear people who got sober 10, 11 years old in Iquipa, New York, you know, and they tell the stories of how they were not diagnosed, but finally they met up with the force of this movement, this recovery movement, which has changed our attitudes and waked up the medical community and given us a chance to get well. Just like if we had diabetes, childhood diabetes at 10 or 11, you know, just like we had some illness that we could learn how to treat. We know how to treat alcoholism now. We know. If you're willing, we know how to do it. And you quickly learn, because it takes about that fast to learn. And you just hold on to it for dear life and you get a hold of it. But then I didn't have that. But I had an awful lot of pills from all my New York doctors who would give me anything I wanted, you know. I took all of them frequently. And then of course I had also, you would know that, an eating disorder. Of course I had an eating disorder. And of course I had to take all the pills that you get for that. You know, the little blue pills, the little green pills, the yellow pills, and the purple ones to go to sleep. And believe me, I wanted to go to sleep a lot. However, I had this huge thing going on, this career that was operating without my, by that time, having to do much, except be unhappy that I was called upon to go out into the world and travel around and do press, particularly do press. You know, that I remember in England in 1975, I had to do press because I had a big hit with there in England. 67 weeks on the charts with Sending the Clowns. And they wanted me to come over there and be on television. How outrageous is that? I couldn't believe it, and I was furious about the whole thing. The record company, the people wanting, you know, it takes a long time to crawl back. I hope you know that. I had no idea how far down I was going. So there I was, had all these pills. You know, doctors in New York were amazing, and I think the medical profession in general was amazing, including the therapists. You know, they couldn't get it, they didn't get it. They could see you walk in, ripped to shreds, you know, boiled as an owl, you know, and ask you whether you thought you wanted to be on an antidepressant. I mean, completely insane behavior about this illness. Insane and irresponsible. I heard a woman in New York a couple of weeks ago. She's a young woman. She's not even 40, but she was a doctor. She was in pre-med. Her story would you know, take the paint off the walls. It was a horrible story. And she finished eventually her double doctorate, and is a doctor in a hospital. All those years that she was using the way she was using, she was in a hospital. She was in ERs. Nobody ever nailed her. I mean, get a life. What do you know? You know, one of us in walking into a room nowadays, you would know in 5 minutes what kind of shape I was in. My doctors, I remember one of my favorite doctors used to say to me, "Have you ever thought about drinking highballs?" I said, what exactly is a highball? Of course I didn't. You know, I wanted it quick and down and dirty. So the drinking had gone from pints and then quarts and then half gallons. I had a fear that I would not have enough to drink. So in my closet in New York, there were cases of half gallons of vodka. I thought vodka you didn't know, you couldn't smell. And then at the end I thought, this was 23 years of drinking, right? The last 4 years started in 74. And I thought I would you know, win the bet by switching to sake. I thought, well, you have to heat it up, don't you? You have to heat it up, and then you won't drink so much. I was drinking it cold out of the bottle. So that nothing worked. Nothing worked. All of my best laid plans. And I want you to know that I was a searcher for the better way. I was always reading self-help plans. I was always getting on the next diet. You know, I would go to different things like EST. I kept right into therapy all that time. I would go and get body work with people. I would go to my friend who treated me, and she was an Alexander Technique therapist. She was very good for me. She saw me from the worst of my drinking through to sobriety, and she was very helpful. But she didn't know. Nobody seemed to know what was the matter with me. Those 4 years, 74, 5, 6, 7. The last year, first of all, I could go for the day when I had to work. When I had to go and sing, you know, there's a young man that I know, his age is 21, comes from down in southern Colorado. I could do that. I could go do that. I could sing concerts. I could go on the road. But I always had to drink every day, so I always had to get the level up. So those quarts, those half gallons, you know, I had to have them in my life. And the last 4 years, I couldn't not drink. I had to drink round the clock. And the last year, I couldn't stop for the concerts. So the last year, in 77, I would go out with a group of, you know, 10, 12, 15 people, supposedly on a 15-concert tour. And the first city we'd land in, I'd lose my voice, because what was happening was that the alcohol was getting to my vocal cords, and I had something called a hemangioma, which is, in short, it's just those capillaries on your face that break, you know, with us that drink so much, only it happened on the vibrating surface here. And the doctors said, you know, it's getting worse. So I'd lose my voice, get into a hotel with these 10 or 12 people, stay for a week and a half, 2 weeks, take prednisone, go to the doctor, get the voice back, do the next concert, and then have to cancel because I'd lose it. I had that surgery finally at the end of 77, which I had to have. It was a brand new surgery.